Welcome to Junkyard Theory, everybody. And today we have got Michael V. Eppinette, creature designer and concept artist, the guy with the weird face right there. I'm joking. The guy with the lizard on his shoulder on the promo pic. That's him right there. Michael, thanks so much for joining, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Akash.
Been super excited to get you on the show ever since I watched Prey, and man, you guys knocked it right out of the park. Hats off. Best Predator film since the original. I mean, I'm gonna kind of argue with that because I'm kind of gravitating more towards Prey because I like the story. I love the setting. I love what you guys did with the Predator design. Everything. It's amazing, man. Like I
Thank you.
really wish I got the chance to see this on a big screen because I honestly
Me
don't
too. Me
know
too.
why it went straight to streaming because it was a theatrical experience. Like it was, I
You know
I
what
don't know.
I would have liked? I wasn't able to at the time, but I
Mhm.
believe there was a screening at Comic-Con that I was
Yes,
just
yes,
itching to head over to see, but
I heard
it
about
didn't
that.
work out. But I'm sure everyone
Yeah,
enjoyed that.
yeah. But man, I mean, before we get to Prey, I want to talk a bit about you because I've seen your concept art. It's amazing. Been going through your portfolio for a while since I came across your work, and talk to
Oh,
me a
thank
bit
you.
about how you got into drawing concept art, the film industry, basically your origin story.
My origin story. Oh my goodness. Um, well, I suppose ever since I was a kid, I was just absolutely obsessed with animals and dinosaurs. And the way I expressed that love for them was just doodling all the time. I remember I would have these. I would just go through entire reams of copy paper, just doodling, doodling. Right. Always have a sketchbook on me or one of those Magna doodles or whatever. Anyway, then in high school, I began to work at the Houston Zoo. All right. I just volunteered there over the summer and just I think that's where I just got to be exposed to a lot of animals and creatures, in the flesh, and I think then was when I started to develop an ethic of, what they looked like, how they acted like, and um, from there, it's funny though because I was in high school. I thought I was going to be a scientist, right? I thought I was going to go into biology or zoology or whatever. But I love to draw, absolutely love to draw, and at some point I entered a contest called the Stan Winston School. uh, If you've heard of the Stan Winston School of Character Arts, they hosted a contest
100%.
during
They
my
hold it every
se-
year, I think, with
Hmm.
makeup. With makeup concept art,
Yes,
they
yes.
have various categories. Yeah,
Yeah, they bring in the best of
yeah.
practical effects, character design, and makeup, and then they put the tutorials online. And they're honestly such a stellar team. I love them so much. Um, oh no, they put up a contest. I entered the contest. It was to design a kaiju, right? The kaiju I designed, his name was Jaga. He was this, and then oh man, so they flew me out to Los Angeles. They built the thing 8 feet tall. I just remember Billy Bryan, right? He's a guy that plays and built the suit for the Ghostbusters Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, right? And he was the guy that they had in charge of building at least my kaiju. The other guy was Ted Haynes. Um, but yeah, so they fly me out there and I see this thing in the flesh, right? It's 8 feet tall. It's huge. It's nasty looking, just like the artwork. I'm so excited, right? And then Bill says, "Wait, I gotta show you something," right? And he goes over and he flips some switch, and poof, the lights turn on, right? So the eyes start glowing bright orange. It was, I was like a kid at Christmas, right? But at the end of that whole experience, I kind of knew it's like, all right, this is a real job. This is something I really want to do. I want to be a creature designer. I want to be a concept artist. Um, so since then, it's been a wild ride. But Matt Winston at the Stan Winston School, he introduced me to Alec Gillis at Studio ADI. They brought me on board to do just some sketching for the Shane Black Predator film. I think it came out in 2019. They had me doing some like Predator attack dogs, and then and then these menagerie monsters, right? So originally the script had the Predator was going to have his essentially living trophies aboard his ship that they were harvesting DNA from, and they just told me design weird things with lots of teeth, and I'm like, all right, let's do that. And then long story short, I graduated college, met my wife, got married, and then shortly thereafter received a call that said, "Hey, you want to work on the next Predator?" Okay. And I didn't even realize at the time of the call that they were talking about designing the Predator.
The
So
Predator.
that was exciting. That was very exciting.
That's so cool. I mean, when this project was first announced, there was no relation to the Predator at all. But did you guys know from the start that this was what you guys are working on?
We knew from the start that this is a Predator film, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I recall. Well, first of all, the Predator, and even in my files and everything, it's called Skulls, right? That was going to be the original
Hmm.
title for the film, was Skulls.
Yep.
And I was thinking at the get-go, like, how cool would this be if no one knew it was a Predator film? All right, and your preview was just essentially your main character's running from something in the woods, right? And all of a sudden, the very last frame is like you see the three dots show up on the forehead, and you hear
Oof.
some clicking, right? And what I thought was sick though is like later on I found out that was Dan's idea. Dan originally
Nah.
wanted it to not be known that it was a Predator film until the trailer. It's like,
Mm.
oh man, it's all right. It would have been cool, but it was cool nonetheless, right? At the end of the day, you know, I think people got appropriately excited about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. But man, that if that plan had worked out, I heard that Dan was a little bit disappointed when the news kind of leaked that Prey was gonna be a Predator sequel. But if that plan had actually worked out, that would have been like a hell of a way to realize what this movie was about.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. Especially because we really
Yeah.
haven't. I mean, since I mean, I guess 2019 isn't that long ago, but like we
It was
haven't heard anything
2018,
about
right?
Predator,
Yeah,
huh? Yeah, that was the
2018,
last. That was
2018.
the
Yeah.
Predator. Oh, okay, 2018. Okay.
Hmm. Yeah, but man, I mean, the first time you see this trailer, like it's entirely different. Like it's gone way back into the past, way before Arnold's, way before the 80s. This is like what,
I
that 200, 400 years ago,
think
200
it
years
was
ago,
300 or something.
300 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
And the whole appeal, like I think it kind of went back to its roots. There's no tech. It's about a character trying to survive against a more technologically advanced hunter, and it's her gut, skill, instinct, everything, the natural urge to survive, which gets them, which essentially progresses the story. What when you did you at any point read the script, or
No.
what were you handed up first?
Everything I learned about the character was just
Mhm.
conversation with Alec and Tom in Studio 80i.
Right.
So I did know that it was going to be. So, oh, what was I handed at first?
Yeah.
So very first thing, we actually got handed some artwork from the last studio that had done some work for it. So I guess
Hmm.
when they were getting because by the time it got to Studio 80i to do the practical, it hadn't gotten greenlit yet, right?
I see.
So we actually received some artwork that the director is like, "Hey, this is cool about this, but we kind of want to tweak this, see if we can take it in a different direction." It's like, all right, cool. Some of the things that they liked about the artwork that they brought over was like a very slender build, right?
Hmm.
In fact, the character was much more. I it had musculature, but it was almost built like a Navi, like the Avatar movie.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
slender, which was pretty interesting to me. Um, because it suggested a different character, right? In the end, I think the route that we went was the right move for the character, just because the character in the script was so proud, right? He was
Hmm.
so haughty, when he killed people, he just like he would just walk up to him and do it.
Yeah.
Totally unshielded and everything. So at the end of the day, I think the design we went with was right for the character because of his ego, right? Which arguably is the reason that he gets killed in the end.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's what we were handed originally. And interestingly too, a lot of folks ask about the eye spacing, like why the eyes get wider apart.
Wider. Yeah.
Yeah, so
What was that?
the artwork that we received, some of the aspects that the director liked, the eyes were actually on the sides of the head, right?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, and the conversation at ADI was like, okay, let's see what we can do with this, because typically herbivores have their eyeballs on the sides of their head, right? And predators have their eyes on the front of the head for binocular vision, right? Which essentially means they have a 3D read of what they're looking at. So we ended up just kind of bringing the eyes a little further to the front of the head, but still keeping some of the creatureness. And if you look at a lot of like lions and tigers, they have eyes that are sort of spaced apart, which was in line with the character we're designing. In fact, the name of the feral, right? Whenever it was
Yeah.
decided it was going to be called feral, that started to drive the design for me. I was like, all right, I can work with feral. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was Alex's idea, I think.
Nice. How much input did you have in designing this version of the Predator? Because the moment this guy is unmasked, that's when you realize, oh, okay, yeah, he is slender. But then the moment he's unmasked, you see that is this guy is nothing like we've ever seen before. He's got the dreadlocks, but his facial structure, it's entirely different, apart from the mandibles, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So even the mandibles too. What we did is the typical predator will hit. How do I do this? They'll come in the
Like,
middle, right? And then the ones will
yeah.
come over top. So these come sideways, these come up, right?
Hmm.
I wanted to do it a little differently and have them come vertical, right?
Vertical. Okay. Oh.
And this was driven because in the 2018 Predator movie, there's a scene where the Predator bites a guy, right? You remember?
Hmm.
He's on the
Yep.
operating
Yep.
table and he just reaches
Yeah.
over and
Yeah.
bites a guy. And I was like, I don't super buy it. It didn't look like he could really chomp down. So I wanted to design it in such a way that really looked like he could cause some damage if he chomped down, right?
Got you. Okay.
And a lot of the features that went into the design were based on, okay, this Predator, right, relies more on his own biology than he does on technology, right? Now, in my view, this is a choice, right? Because 300 years is not that long ago for a spacefaring technological creature, right? Because I feel like if you can invent light speed travel, then you probably have already invented cloaking technology. You've probably already invented plasma casters, right? So, my thoughts were that the Predator chooses the weaponry that's going to most effectively provide an entertaining and challenging hunt for himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the Predator, in observing the locale and the people who he's going to be hunting, chose his weaponry because of that. In the same way that a trophy hunter on Earth, is not going to go take a bazooka to hunt deer, right? That don't make no sense. A
Yeah.
trophy hunter on Earth might go take a bow to hunt deer, or you name it, right? And a bow has been around for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, right? But it still it makes for a challenging and rewarding hunt, right? Make sense?
It totally does. Totally does.
Okay.
Yeah, because even without the plasma cannon, you still have the what do you call it? Is it the honing beacon? You still have that,
Yes,
and
yes.
yeah, you still have that, and it's not the shoulder mounted cannon. It's something that's within his gauntlet as well. So it's like
Okay.
the technology is still there, but he's just chosen differently because it's probably his first time on Earth as well. Was that
Yeah.
I heard that somewhere.
They advertise it as first time on Earth, first time on
Hmm.
Earth. I personally I felt like that closed off opportunities for anything that takes place earlier. And I
Hmm.
believe even seeing that Dan in an interview somewhere says it's like this Predator's first time on Earth. It's like,
Oh, okay,
okay, well,
okay, okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So, if they ever want to do a Predator versus Caveman or something, right? By the way, I've seen quite a bit of talk about Predator. This is not
Yeah.
talk I've heard like from industry. This is just on Twitter and things, but Man, I would sure be on down for a samurai predator film.
Talk about it. That's making
Man.
the rounds.
By the way,
That's making the rounds. Yeah,
at the end of this, I want to pitch you my samurai predator film. All right, but
totally
I
down
did
for
want
it.
to get back to your question, like why some of the facial features and things were so much different than former
Mm.
predators, right? So again, to this subspecies or subgenus of Yautja, right, is relies more on his own physical ability than he does on his weaponry, right?
Mhm.
That was part of the conversation that drove the design. Um, in so doing, if you look at even the hands have like almost like gecko pads or roughness on the hands for climbing with, right?
Oh, okay.
Um, if you if you imagine this species or subspecies of Yautja that gets genetically isolated from the other Yautja, right?
Hmm.
And begins to develop and self-select on its own for traits that make it more suitable for surviving its own environment, which I picture personally as more like a savanna or like a less jungly, drier atmosphere. I've seen people even propose like volcanic, which is kind of exciting. Um, but so what we did was just we loaded him up with more like biological components. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So
Yep.
this enlarged forehead brow, right? We referenced pit vipers and gave him heat sensing organs in that brow, right? And the mask
Mhm.
is eyeless, right? The mask has no eyes. It actually interfaces with his heat sensing organs, right? And gives it, and the way I see it, it's sort of a co-op between the organs and his eyes, right? Because if you look at the original Predator film, it's canon that when he takes off the mask, his vision gets a whole lot crappier, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like, all right, so so Predator does not have the greatest vision, right? But he obviously didn't need it, right? Nor did he
Mm.
necessarily need the air in the mask to breathe effectively, or at least to breathe for the duration of time he was fighting Arnold, right? So we're like,
Yeah.
all right, what if this mask is not necessarily putting it's not necessarily putting like a chemical that he can only breathe and he can't breathe earth air. He can breathe earth air. He can get by for a bit just fine, you know?
Yeah.
But perhaps it's more like doing atmospheric control, right? So maybe it's temperature, maybe it's humidity, maybe it's a bit of chemical concoction, you know, but ultimately he can survive with it off for a bit, right? And if you notice too, the mask in our design, it doesn't cover the mouth. That was a choice of the director. So the
Hmm.
conversation back and forth with us was like, all right, if it ain't covered in the mouth, how does he breathe, right? So this is
Hmm.
when we got into a little bit like it's always risky when you sort of make a design choice that in turn
Yeah.
says like, okay, we're sort of saying something that no one knew about the original design too, right? But
Yeah.
we kind of talked back and forth, but like, all right, we can get away with this, right? Frogs breathe through their skin, right? Um, Also, there's a lot of insects that have nares. In fact, all insects, I suppose, have these little nares in their body. I think they're called spiracles that they breathe through.
Hmm.
So we gave the feral predator a line of spiracles in his crest, right? That if his
Right.
mask latches into it, you'll actually hear it in the
Uh-huh.
film. It goes, tss, right? So it's
Yeah.
putting
Yeah. Yeah.
atmospheric controlled air into those spiracles, right? So we're
Wow.
saying, okay, maybe this original predator did that as well, or some combo of the two. But yeah, fun fact. All right, go ahead, go ahead.
No, that's cool. I mean, it's totally fascinating because back when you watched the original movie, you this creature, right? It's one of the weirdest looking creatures ever designed.
It's
For
unbeatable.
it's unbeatable. It's
It's
unbeatable, and
cool. Yeah.
yeah, and you take that and add to the mythology, that's come through the entire franchise. And you guys also, you were talking to me about this before, the mask design, where you kind of got the inspiration from, and talk to me a bit
Oh yes,
about that,
yes.
and yeah, talk to me a bit about that, and using all the mythology that you had, and at the same time adding on knowledge from from essentially like what I'm inferring from what you're saying is You've been an observer of natural life, and you've been drawing facts from what you've seen and integrating it into your design as well.
Certainly.
What was the balance like
What was the balance like between what?
between essentially having to balance the existing mythology and bringing in something your own?
Okay. So the challenge is, right, like absolute like respecting the original design, right? And but still giving something new, right?
Yeah.
And I don't care who does that. Someone's going to be upset. Someone's going to be
You can't please
someone's
everybody,
going to be happy. Honestly, I was very pleasantly surprised to see how many folks were happy with this, because ultimately my goal was to honor the when I say the heart of the design, it it took some careful observation of the original Predator design to see what works about it, right? Because like if you want to change an original design at all, you can't. You have to keep what works about the original, or the new thing is just not going to be a Yautja or a Predator. It's going to be a different creature entirely, right? So what I noticed, because when I first saw the Predator, I was a kid, right?
How much did
And
it traumatize you?
oh man, so but good question. Maybe I can't remember because it's been like vaulted. But what surprised me about it is how the mask lied about what was underneath. When the
Talk
mask
about it.
comes off, it was an absolute surprise what was underneath. Because the eye, if the the original mask almost has like the big eyes on the mask go all the way out, right? When the mask comes off, the eyes are right here, and it's just like deep skull sockets, right? And I was noticing too, okay, when this Predator has his mouth open, right? The place where the throat is and where the top of the palate is actually where kind of looks like where a human skull would have its nasal cavity, right? So it's like, oh, okay, maybe one of the reasons that the predator face is so like jarring and terrifying, and why the design works so well is it's sort of an abstract of a human skull. Okay, so with the feral design, my goal was, what if we did the same thing with essentially an animal skull? What if we took like a lion skull and did an abstract of that, right? So if you rotate the model around, and I've yet to post a turntable of the final model. By the way, after this interview here, I'm posting a storm of Gods of Dirt. There's plenty more to come. I've probably posted about 50%, maybe 50%
Okay.
of what we got. But yeah, so if you look at it, there's different features that are supposed to emulate an animal skull, right? So even when the mouth is wide open, if you look at where the nasal cavity of like a lion skull is, it's supposed to mirror that. And there's some element of that in like the wide set eyes and the cheekbones and the way that the casque is shaped. Because you notice probably too in some of the images released that the casque is a lot smaller. The crest is a lot smaller than former Predators, which to me totally works as like a just a biological adaptation, right? So if the Predator that folks are used to, they've got this adaptation of this wide display casque, that houses the mandibles and things, and the feral Predator doesn't prioritize that, And another thing was like, let's prioritize offense on this Predator. It's less defense, more offense, right? So we don't need any sort of shielding necessarily, right? So let's bring the head shield down. He doesn't need this big Triceratops frill. Let's really narrow it down. These let's make the jaws more crushing as opposed to just piercing, right? The original Predator, it's got piercing jaws. Let's give ours crushing jaws, right? So these mandibles there's a sort of secondary, right? And the inner mouth is the primary, right? So if you notice too in some of the design stuff, you'll see molars, right? Yeah. So the idea was let's give some more bite
Omnivorous
pressure.
features as well. Okay.
Yeah. So I was really hoping for a scene where the Predator just like reaches his whole mouth around a guy's head and just crushes down. But c'est la vie. Sequel.
Sequel.
But
Looking at the design that you guys came up with, I mean, since you mentioned this, it does feel way more of a, it feels way more primitive hunter like, and it's got a few insect features as well, maybe like mantis. It's got a bit of a stick insect, the lanky figure as well, but
Mm,
definitely it's got more, how do you call it, felineness in there as well.
mm,
This is a creature who leaps from like one tree top to the other. You know, like as heavy as he is, he's very athletic. Like you know, you were saying that that's the kind of design that you guys went with. And more than a bodybuilder, he built more like a basketball player, which is why I guess you guys cost. I keep forgetting his name, man.
oh, Dane Diliegro.
Yeah, Dane Leagro, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's interesting the permutations that the physical like
mm,
body type of the predator went through.
yeah,
Because originally we got essentially like a Navi, right? It was very
mm,
thin, almost to the point. It was almost like a I don't know if you would imagine like how thin a horror character is, kind of like really kind of thin and creepy, right? And then so we sent some designs off that way, in that direction, and the note got back from
mm.
the director like, oh, where's the pecs, right? All right, so okay, we can beef him up a bit. So Predator put on a few pounds, working out a bit, right? We sent the design and then it was hilarious. But I would send this design over, right? And then I got the same note back like 5 times.
Mm-hmm.
More shredded.
Mm.
Right? So it said it, I was hanging on to the skinniness too, and the note got back more shredded. Note got back more shredded. Finally, I started saving the character in my files as the Shredditor. Right? Just gets, but I was scratching my head. I was like, how is this guy not shredded? So finally, I literally Googled like most shredded man on Earth, right? And, and he came up with this Eastern European guy and all his photos of him just like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's like, oh, okay, I get it. The muscles are like rippling out of the skin. There is
Mm.
zero body fat, and by the way, that
Body
has some
fat, yeah.
biological reasoning behind it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So creatures that have less of a fat diet,
Mm-hmm.
um, so for example, a bonobo or a chimpanzee is going to have like under 5% body fat, right? And the reason is because they've got quite a bit of fruit in their diet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they have no reason to they have no reason to store body fat, right? Because they're not going to be going long times without it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, which I realize out loud presents problems if we're talking about a drier climate for the
Yeah.
for the feral, right? But I don't know. There's part of the conversation at least. You know what I mean?
Got you. Okay. Right. Okay. As a creature designer, how much research? So, where do you start your research?
Oh man, it's I say first and foremost the thing's got to just look cool and be fun, you know.
Mm.
Um, but it goes hand in hand, right? So
Aesthetics and functionality, both.
yeah, because
Yeah.
you don't want to. At least I don't want to start with like, okay, these. Even though I did start with like, I want this predator to have heat sensing pits like a viper, because that's just sick to me. Like it's the vipers see in heat vision. The predator sees in heat vision. Give the predator heat sensing pits, right?
Yep.
So that was fun. But other than that, it was my research just starts on paper, just sketching, right? Um, and once we have a direction and a design that we like, we head it into sculpture, and it's kind of then that we start pulling in imagery and resources from animals and nature, you know?
Got you.
Because
Okay.
otherwise, the danger is it's going to look like the animal if you start from that. You know what I mean? But
Mm-hmm.
if you start from the predator, you know, and then begin to incorporate other things, it's going to maintain the heart of the
The
heart
core
of
of
the
the
predator.
character.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
I
That
know you
makes
wanted to
sense.
touch on the mask, and
Yeah. Talk to me about the mask because it's not the usual type. It definitely looks like part of a skull, and I've seen it on. Like, I've seen discussions online as well, saying this is probably what was the name? A river ghost?
A river ghost.
A river ghost. Yeah, part of a river ghost's skull. But tell me the story behind this. You tell me earlier.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Spilling the beans here. Um. So, quick story about the mask. The mask, a mask design came to us with a similar shape from the former company that had like it covered the top but didn't cover the mandibles, right? So the mandibles were exposed, and it had almost like a bird-like shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, the artwork that we saw wasn't bone yet; it was still like a metallic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And then we didn't work on the mask for a bit. We worked on the creature design, right? And somewhere along the road, the direction became let's conceal the mandibles. All right? Just like, okay. So if you look in the design, the final designs that I submitted, the mandibles are actually concealed in like a flesh, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
That was sort of the solution for an interesting challenge because it's like the predator's like his bread and butter is his mandibles, right?
Yeah.
Um so the I was kind of scratching my head, like, okay, how are we going to conceal these, right? Um, it was interesting. It was interesting. I think we came to it whenever we kind of had him protruding from the face, but then sort of enveloped in a skin, right? Even if you look at the original Predator, right? You look at him in profile; those mandibles are enveloped in skin almost to the tips. What we did was just pull that skin a little further forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he had just more lip tissue, and it'd be kind of interesting when he flapped open, like he flayed open. But consequently, it provided another challenge. It's like, all right, if this mask is not going to cover the mandibles, how are the mandibles going to show, right?
Yeah.
Um, so initially I was presenting ideas where it's like, okay, let's get the mask covering the mandibles again, because if we don't cover the mandibles, you still don't see the mandibles because it's just gonna be skin, right? So ultimately, I think they made the cool decision in the film when they pulled the skin back, right? So in the film,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, you see the mandibles flag. It looks sick. It looks
Yeah.
amazing. Another choice that
Yeah.
they made that after the fact, after I submitted stuff that I thought was fantastic and just improved it tenfold, was they gave it these teeth sockets in the bottom of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so the original inspiration for the mask, at least for the bone mask, came from it. Well, first and foremost, the conversation was how do we make this character emulate a Wendigo? All right,
Ooh.
all right. So we're in
Okay.
Native American uh, culture and mythos, right? Can we
Nice.
emulate the
Hmm.
their
They're
monster?
monsters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So it's funny too, because in one of the sketches I posted, you can see antlers on one of the masks that I erased out because I was like, that's too on the nose, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at some point, I want to post. I had this image, right, where the predator, he would flay out his mandibles, right, and then he would flip his head upside down, okay, and then
Mm-hmm.
and it would look like a false face. There would be a false face on the cask, like false
Okay.
eyes, and then the
Uh-huh.
mandibles would stick up and look like horns, and you could be
Oh,
peering from
okay.
the
Okay.
woods, right? Because we're trying to emulate this Wendigo, right? This sort of
Mm-hmm.
skullish, uh, really creepy thing, right? And
Yeah.
it the predator sort of fits the bill on so many levels of this murderous thing that rips the skin off of things and wears their skulls and like it's like it almost makes you wonder if the original Predator concept was based on a Wendigo or Skinwalker monster,
Mm.
right? So that's what we're trying to emulate. I turned to cetacean skulls for my reference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I turned to dolphins. I turned to, I believe, because a dolphin's skull looks very different than a dolphin, right? Because that big meaty forehead that a dolphin has, the
The
melon,
dome. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Under that,
Yeah.
that's just bone, right? This weird cavity, right? So
Yeah.
it was just like this very alien creature, and of course, we're going off the idea this is a trophy that and everyone understands that if you look at what people are talking about, um, it's a trophy that the predator hunted, right? And the creature that he hunted there's been talk about whether or not it is a river ghost from the 2010 Predators film. And I have to admit, I because I saw that presented, right? I was like, did I literally could not remember if I had pulled that up or anything. And then I remembered, yes, I did pull up River Ghost reference. So let it be known that at one point I referenced a River Ghost skull. Whether or not the mask is of a River Ghost, I will leave it up to the fan base to decide. Or if it is a, another creature that is on the River Ghost planet that is maybe a relative of that creature. That seems well within the realm of plausibility. Right? So, I do have to admit, I referenced a River Ghost with something of an intention of emulating that and seeing if people caught on. So,
there you go.
Y'all are awesome. Congrats. Yeah.
Confirmation from the man himself.
Yeah.
I'm so curious to see, the remaining concept art, and I had to ask this question. Do you think there's gonna be an art half book coming out sometime? Because
I don't know. I would love an art of book. I don't know if there's going to be.
Trust me, I'd buy it.
Me too. Dude, yeah. I would love an art of book. So seriously. I'm not sure if they will, because I also want to see everyone else's art. I want to see the
how many artists work on this roughly? Do you have any idea?
That I know of. Okay, there's some real powerhouses. First of all, we had Farzad, who is a Predator alumni, right? So he's a veteran Predator designer. So to get to design alongside him was pretty exciting. And it's funny too, because I was struggling to get a real mechanical look for the weaponry that they had me doing. So at some point I was like, guys, give this to Farzad. like, all right, we got you, right? So they passed some of the, so like the pack design was so funny. I did this one design and I sent it to Alec, right? And he's like, that looks like a high school kid going to band practice with his French horn. I was like, I'm having a hard time with these packs. Send it to Farzad. Farzad killed it. By the way, Farzad really had a big hand in establishing the character of this predator, that this was a killer, right? So some of his initial artwork really captured this sort of svelte, thin, like athletic, but also just creepy and like serial killer vibes this predator had. So you really got to hand it to him for like establishing a lot of the vibe of this character, and and that's so important throughout the whole thing, is maintaining a ethos of what the character is going to be and the what he's going to put off. And then he also did a ton of work on finalizing weaponry. I believe another guy whose name escapes me did the crossbolt gun. And then Justin Fields was a 3D designer that finalized and did just sick artwork for gauntlets and the shield and the inside of the mask, and he finalized my mask sculpt and just really brought it to the finish line. Other folks, I know there's Kyle Brown, Ehsan Biglu. They were at Aaron Sims' company that did some artwork before it came to ADI. Gotcha. Oh man, if I'm forgetting anyone on the design team, I'll be sad. But
no, that goes to show that it's not just a one-man army, even within a specific department. You got so many people handling different different branches that ultimately lead to this final product that you see on screen. But sometimes,
and then also, just quick, like Alec and Tom at Studio ADI, they assembled the design team. Their art direction is driving this vision, and I'm really grateful for they gave me a very long leash. All right, so they essentially said, like, just especially at the beginning, I was like, see what you come up with, and we'll see what's cool, and we'll go with it. They didn't want to miss out on anything cool if by bringing it too tight in. But yeah, those guys, they were on the set of the original Predator, you know. So if anyone's going to be able to speak to the heart of the original Predator design, it's going to be them, right? So that was sick. But go ahead, I cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say that sometimes you put in so much work, and if anyone's taking a close look, going frame by frame, they'll probably notice it. But does it ever bug you that most of the work that you put in, sometimes people just do not notice this? All that research, all those features for the character design that they're there on screen, but people never really realize what it's used. Why did you use certain? I don't know. Does that ever bother you?
You know, I don't think I can say that it has for this film. First, this is my first movie that concept art got into. First of all, so I'm very excited, right? But yeah, you sometimes you wonder what could have been, right? My only man, I wish we could have gotten this was if you notice, this Predator has a much thicker upper lip, right? Than the former Predator that's almost has no lip at all, right?
There's no lip.
That lip has a function, okay? The gelada baboon is a species of Ethiopian primate, right? Not technically a baboon. It's related to a prehistoric type of primate called a Theropithecus, which translates to beast ape, which is kind of fun.
Oh.
But so the gelada baboon, right? The gelada baboon, its threat displays, it flips its lip inside out and exposes its gums and teeth, right? And to me, it's like, man, that is the most. Yeah, exactly, right. That's like the most predator-like living animal there is, right? So it's like, if we could get a bit of that in that feral, that would have been fun.
That's true.
So
hey, sequel.
Right. This is what I say though. Like the anatomy's there. Like we could just have him flip his lip up in the next one. You know what I mean? But other than that, I don't think there's much missed just in this film. Just because he's like you get such a good look at him. In daylight, at nighttime, with his mask on, with his mask off. What is funny to me is you see the single frame of the unmasked version that goes around the internet, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like that unmasking sequence, I love it. Like, first of all, the fact that, what do you think about the fact that he didn't choose to take his mask off, but actually just got it knocked off? What do you think about that?
Story-wise?
Yeah.
It's a proper blow to his ego.
Yeah.
Because he didn't do it. He did not do that out of respect for his enemy. No, they knocked it out. And that's just gonna supercharge him and put him into like a 5th gear or 6th gear. He's gonna be anally angry as he did that. He's gonna go into like a more feral motive.
Yeah. I didn't know that was gonna happen. That took me completely by surprise. It was awesome. That was my favorite moment. I thought it was such a fantastic choice. All right, because like every Predator before now, to my knowledge, has had this epic cinematic moment where he's like,
yes,
you know what I mean, right? Where it's this big deal and it's theatrical. And no, this guy just got it knocked off, right? And you saw how mad he was, So that sequence I loved. But I do think that the single frame that people are grabbing and saying this is the unmasked feral Predator is a bit unfair. All right? Well, not unfair necessarily, but misrepresentative. The reason I say that is because, first of all, if you pause someone while they're talking, they're going to look like this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Second of all, the camera angle. It's like a selfie camera, so it's like this, right? So,
not the most flattering.
Right. But it's funny too because I went through every frame too. Like, wonder which frame, right? So I caught one frame. I was like, all right, this is sick, right? But it's funny though because it's blurry. The reason that frame is the most circulated is because it's the least blurry, right? Why is it
Yeah.
blurry? Because the guy was moving, right? So it's funny. To anyone who hasn't seen the film but has seen that image, watch the film. It's in motion. It reads differently. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. Um, Man, the use of that shield, like now you said that you guys are going more with an offensive, with more offensive weapons, but that shield is something that they've not seen before.
Mm.
What did you have any hand in that, or do you know any reason why that came in there?
That was the director. All right.
Hmm.
So the shield was designed by the VFX company.
Okay.
And yeah, and like the offensive predator, that was part of the offensive predator.
But no, I mean, like he uses the shield
But
as an offensive weapon as well. Like he literally
yeah,
decapitates a guy with that.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
a surprise. That was cool. So for it to also double as an axe, that was cool. I
Mm,
didn't, I touched the shield design, but ultimately they went with the VFX company's design, which worked the best because it had this sort of like, it was very like utilitarian, right? One thing that
exactly.
kept coming up was like, this guy is not all too high on aesthetics. He's not doing ceremonial beautiful stuff. It's more
Exactly. It
like,
did not feel 100% polished. It had a sense of rawness to it. Like everything that he
yeah,
owns,
yeah.
it has that sense
Yes.
of rawness.
We were even talking about the conversation was like, I think it was like Soviet Union kind of like brutalism, right?
Hmm.
Where it's just total utility, total like just this works, it don't have to be pretty, right?
Function over form. Okay.
Exactly. With
Yeah.
the only ornamental, which helps because I wasn't the best at doing like armor pieces. So when I was designing gauntlets, I'm like, glad these only have to be functional, right? Um, but yeah, but we did do like some bone ornamentation with like runes etched into them.
Hmm. Yeah.
If you can read what it says, props to you.
Okay. Okay. Easter eggs.
No,
Here we go.
quite frankly, I didn't. I really wanted to, but I did not have the time to go in and actually write something. So
Oh, so it's all gibberish.
it's gobbledygook, right? It's the Predator version of a mom tattoo on his arm. No, no, but no. Um, but no, as much as I would like to, it was fun. At one point, we were talking about doing scarification as the armor.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, because went through several before in fact, we spent like 2 weeks on armor, right? In fact,
Hmm.
we spent like 3 days on toenails, dude. There was so much
Oh.
time spent on every aspect. The hands, the way that the texture of the inside of the hands was,
Hmm.
the color scheme, the way that the claws were, you know. We spent a lot of time on all the details, the way that the hair was. We even had designs where his hair was tied back, right? But that
Question:
was something that was really.
Is that actually hair? Because I mean, I know
Oh,
it
I said
looks like
hair. It's
dreadlock. Yeah.
dreadlocks. It's very much
Dread.
dreadlocks, right? It's
Yeah.
just a thinner dreadlocks, right?
Yeah.
So no, we're not trying to rewrite anything the original Predator was. It's very
Yeah.
much
Okay.
dreadlocks, just thinner ones, right? And my this again is talking about like the the design originally was inspired by like let's have this guy slimmer and have more of this creepy like greasy serial killer vibe, right? And that
Hmm.
kind of drove the thin dreadlocks design. But I like to kind of bring some sort of scientific justification to the table, so it really kind of enhances the lore a bit. And ultimately, I got to thinking about plants, right? Wider leaves are wider to catch more sun and but they lose a lot of moisture. But they're in jungle environments, right? So
Hmm.
wider leaves in jungle environments, they don't have to worry about losing moisture because it's so humid, right?
It's humid. Yeah.
But something
Okay.
like
Okay.
pine needles or a cactus spines, they have to be super thin and waxy,
Hmm.
right? Because they're going to lose all their moisture, right? So if you think you think about the original Predator in his jungle environment, right? In fact, it's canon that he like preferred the hottest times of year to come out and hunt, right? He hunted in the summer, the wettest, hottest, nastiest times of year, right?
Yeah.
So I was saying, all right, if our feral predator comes from a different environment, what is that environment, and how does his design inform that environment? How does his environment inform his design, right? Okay,
Yeah.
if he's from a drier place, more of a savanna, or maybe a mountainous region, or I suppose I'll leave it up to the folks talking lore to come up exactly where he was, but like the thinner dread's gonna make a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Because those big chunky ones, they're losing water, right? This creature is this like kind of wet, almost amphibian skin, right? He's gonna be losing water all the time. If you look at ours, he's scalier, is arguably less ornate. If you want to talk about the crest, right? So even his creature design is a little more form follows function. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
interesting. Since we're kind of coming to the close of the session, I would be delighted to hear your pitch for the Predator versus Samurai sequel.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. All right. So, let me think.
Take your time.
Predator versus Samurai. All right. So you have your the main characters start off as essentially a samurai and his master. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're in feudal Japan, right? So, and this is sort of the latter era, at the end of the era of feudal Japan, right? But one of the feudal lords is referred to as the Oni King, okay? And is essentially both respected and feared as this demon king that lives in the woods and has his own like following, right? And every 10 years or every 50 years or so, he hosts he expects tribute from the surrounding clans, right? But this tribute is not money, it's not crops, it's the best warrior of each of the surrounding clans. That's what he demands. All right? And essentially a competition is held between each of the best warriors of the surrounding clans and the Oni King. All right? This Oni King is, of course, a Yautja. All right? And the story follows the younger samurai who is avenging his master who was essentially slain in this every 50 years competition. Right? So this was inspired by, we've seen predators that just got to Earth. We've seen predators that have been on Earth for a few decades, maybe, in the original.
In and out,
was there for a while. Yeah. So I was saying, what if canonically predators are supposed to live for a couple centuries? What would it look like for a predator to have been on Earth for 200 years?
Ooh.
Nice. He's probably would have gotten bored, but if he found his way to some power, becoming a Japanese feudal lord, and then created a system of bringing the best warriors to him, then he's got it made, So, can make for a fun film.
Essentially, a Ronin trying to avenge his master.
Yes.
Yep. Man, I would so pay to see that. You know what? I was telling you earlier that leading up to the release of Prey, I was having dreams where I was either running away from the Predator or like they were Predator-themed dreams. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna have one set in feudal Japan.
Oh, okay. Tell me about it. Let me know how it goes, and if it works as a movie, and you come back, you're like, man, that dream sucks.
No, anything set in Japan. One thing though, anything set in Japan, it's gonna look definitely way more aesthetic. Trust me on that.
Mm.
A predator with a katana.
Oh my gosh, we had a sword concept in our weapon designs for
Yeah.
for the Predator. Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, it's nothing we haven't seen before in other films, but it's essentially like a sword that would go limp and
Mhm.
be this chain, and then go straight and then become a sword.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
But
Nice.
eventually they decided to go with the normal.
They
What's
had
it
a
called?
shorter version of that, right?
Huh? Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, no. That was the cut clamps. All right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So that was
Mhm.
the little those were supposed to be, those like those little bracelets that you go and they snap on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
One
one
of
of
those.
those, but
Okay.
kills you. Yeah.
But seriously, the concept of a predator in Japan would make so much sense given that the predators, they have their own code of honor. They respect their enemy. It just
Yeah.
works. It's organic. It feels like natural progression,
It's another
storytelling
one of
wise as
those cuz
well.
like in Native American lore as I understand it
Mm.
and how the Wendigo fits into it. Um it's it just seems ripe for a Predator film, right? Cuz like the the cultural understanding of a creature of the sort is already there, but you have the same thing in Japan, right? Where the
Mhm.
cultural understanding of a monster like this, the context is there. So the film is just itching to be made. It just has to be
100%.
written correctly.
Yep.
So in fact, I was looking at Oni masks, right? I was looking at Oni masks and like it got me thinking, I wonder to what degree the original design of Predator was informed by an Oni, right?
Mm.
The way that the masks curl and I'm sorry, the tusks curl and they
Tusks.
this sort
Yeah.
of angry grimace, right? It just got me thinking because it's good, but it would be a fun job, and I hope I get
You,
called for it if it happens.
yeah. You know what? Like, you should take a look at some of these Sri Lankan demon masks as well. They've
Oh,
got
okay,
similar
okay,
tusk designs, and who knows? Maybe that might
yeah, that stuff
help
is
you
on
out.
another level of creepy, right?
Mm. Yep. I'll send you a few pictures.
Yeah, please do, please do. I'm always looking for reference like that. Come on,
100%.
we make monsters, man.
Dude, I am so looking forward to seeing where you go next, what you do next, and totally hoping and praying that you get to work on another Predator movie because Prey was freaking awesome. Guys, if you haven't seen Prey, go watch it. Go watch it now. It's streaming on Hulu. And we never really got down to this discussion, but I personally love the story way more than Arnold's classic. But again, you know what? I that's all macho. I love bulging biceps. I love that handshake. I love all of that. This just feels organic, man. You know.
All right. In the sequel, I want a jungle hunter predator and the feral predator doing the arm wrestle.
that that
And
would
then
be iconic.
we can know who would win.
One thing though, I would really like to see Arnold back in the
Yeah?
franchise. Yep, at some point.
Hmm.
At some point.
All right.
Yep. Let's see how that goes.
Sweet. Yeah,
Michael,
I'm
thank you so
curious cuz
much. Yep.
yeah, of course.
Sorry, I
Oh,
just cut you
I
off.
was just
Sorry.
saying I'm curious where the franchise is going to go because obviously they seem to be having they have lots of plans for it. Not to mention
Mm.
the huge cliffhanger of what happens to that pistol, right? Or the flintlock
Mm.
pistol.
Mm.
You know?
How did the
'Cause
Predators reacquire it?
exactly. I thought they
Yeah.
were gonna wrap that up all nice and tidy. Are you kidding? No, they opened
Nope.
that wide. They left that wide open. So
Wide open. Yeah.
that's interesting. But yeah,
Yep.
that's all I got to say.
Yeah. Michael, thank you so much. And, hopefully, if you get to work on the next Predator, we're having you here back once more.
Dude, thank you so much, Akash, for having me.
No problem. Till then, this is Junkyard Theory, folks.